cybersecurity expert Damon Small, and he's got a really long history in this. He's worked in infosec and energy and cybersecurity, and he speaks binary code. So he's joining us now via Skype. Damon, it's good to see you. Thank you for joining us. So so I know you and others have been saying that this was kind of a long time coming, an attack like this on the biggest pipeline in the country. Talk to us a little bit about this, because these consequences seem so extraordinary. And the one thing that we were talking about yesterday, when DarkSide, the cybercrime outfit that did all of this, when they issued their statement and they were explaining that they didn't mean to really target an entity like the Colonial pipeline. The way that they worded it, and I don't know if I was wearing a tinfoil hat, but it almost sounded like they were trying to bait all these other smaller outfits into all these other smaller businesses into trying to latch on or get involved with some kind of like bigger, like, I don't know, federal infrastructure or what, as a way, as like in lieu of any kind of actual protection or beefing up the security of their infrastructure. Talk to me about your thoughts about all of this and why this was so apparently not paid attention to.
Yeah, and thanks for having me, by the way. It's been a busy week. It's been a busy morning. As you mentioned, a lot of news has broken already. So I've been busy, trying to pay attention and absorb all this in. I think you're right. This has been a long time coming. Maintaining the infrastructure that supports something like a pipeline or a refinery, these are very complicated systems, and it's much more difficult to support and to protect than, say, the IT systems. And by that, I mean, OT is the operational technology, IT is more the traditional sort of business technology, email, web servers, and those sorts of things. And you're right, when DarkSide came out and said, oops, we're just for the money, we are not a political organization, I think that was a signal that, for this criminal enterprise, for this business model, if you will, to work, it depends on the victim organization to quietly pay the ransom and then go away. So I don't think this is the kind of attention DarkSide wanted, which suggests that they stumbled across a vulnerable device, or they ran a successful phishing campaign and somehow gained unauthorized access to the IT network of the Colonial Pipeline Company, and then used that to start pivoting around and taking their data hostage. So there's a lot of assumptions we could make right now, and I'm resisting the urge to do so. I'm a computer scientist, I deal in empirical data, right. But man, it's been a ride. We haven't seen something like this in this country for sure.
Yeah, definitely not. And I hope that I feel like cybersecurity is sort of treated like the redheaded stepchild in a way. When people are talking about infrastructure and improving systems, we're talking about the cybersecurity and Colonial pipeline with our guest Damon Small. Damon, I wanted to ask you too. So why is it taking, because I read it, so what I've been reading about the timeline of this is that after, like hours, I guess, after Colonial Pipeline was notified that this ransomware attack occurred and they couldn't get control of their system, that they had paid the ransom, but yet it's still taking them all this time to get their operations reestablished. If you're paid the ransom, you get control back, right? Isn't that how it works?
That's the other part of this criminal enterprise that has to work properly if it's going to continue to be successful moving forward, is that once they pay the ransom, they have to get their data back. And you're right. I saw it was just this morning. I think it was Bloomberg that reported that something close to $5 million US had been paid. And you're correct. I also saw that they're still restoring from backup. So the good news is it means Colonial Pipeline Company had backups that they could use to restore. That's good news. And it also is telling because it means that the organization believed that the $5 million was a more cost-effective way to get back in business quickly. Now, obviously, that money's gone. It was cryptocurrency of some sort. They're not likely to track down who these adversaries are. So yeah, it's an interesting story, and it makes one wonder. People like me are wondering, how did they get in? Was it a vulnerable computer? Or was it phishing and they preyed on human error? Both of those scenarios are likely, and we've seen them be successful. We've just never seen them be successful in a way that impacts regular people on a day-to-day basis, having to stand in line for gasoline and those sorts of things. So I think that's why it's grabbed everyone's attention. This sort of thing in my industry happens often, but it's interesting to other computer nerds generally.
Yeah. I was reading about this. They said that since 2021, the increase in, I think, ransomware attacks has gone up by something like 311%. And there's a lot of money involved in paying off these ransoms.
If you go back to the beginning of my career, which was something like 25 years ago, cybercriminals existed, but it was high-tech vandalism. They would deface a website.
Right.
And put a rude picture up, those sorts of things. And you're like, haha, you got me. And then you fix it and then you move on with, you're spot on. It sounds dramatic when you use words like, cyber criminal. Notice I haven't used the word hacker because in my industry, a lot of people, hackers are people like me. We're trying to do the right thing.
Right.
We're trying to help organizations. We're trying to protect our country's critical information assets. So now you're right. It is organized crime. Let's be clear here. These folks, DarkSide said it themselves. We are in for the money. We are not a political organization. They just want the payout, and they're going to go and do it again. Now, the fact that the decryption keys did not work in this case, apparently, we're still gathering facts. That's a little damning because that's going to make the next victim, I think, a little less likely to quickly whip out their checkbook. Hopefully it'll be a wake-up call also for similar organizations across the energy spectrum of industries to make sure that they've got good backups, make sure they have good vulnerability management, they're aware of potential exploits that could be used to gain unauthorized access to their infrastructure and so on. So it's a complicated problem for sure.
One thing that you said, we're talking with Damon Small, cybersecurity expert, about this Colonial pipeline story. One of the things that you said that really stuck out to me, and it's the simplicity of it, because really ultimately you could have the beefiest, security system, the beefiest setup in the world, but you still have human error. I mean, you still have, somebody who's like, what's this link do? And they're going to click on it and then you've compromised, who knows what. That's that's also unsettling to think about because, even then it comes down to human error.
Absolutely. And the bad guys know this. They're very good at psychologically understanding what is going to entice someone to click on that link. Again, we're making an assumption that it was phishing, but it absolutely could have been phishing, and you could argue that it's almost likely that it was. But yeah, back to the point of humans. We talk about all these technical controls like firewalls, and we have these we have all this fancy stuff. As it turns out, the weakest component often sits between the keyboard and the chair.
That's right,
and that's us.
That is right.
The chair keyboard interface will always be the weakest link, unfortunately.
Golly. And there's no way to, this sounds almost robotic and too clinical. There's no way to remedy that. There's no way to remove that situation. You just got to tell people to not be goofy.
Be suspicious, understand that the internet is a bad neighborhood and you can't trust anything. It is, not to be flippant about it, but we always, in my industry, we always talk about user training and running internal exercises to get your users accustomed to what a phishing campaign might look like. I don't have a moral high ground to stand on because I know lots of information security professionals that have fallen for such exercises within organizations. So I can't, and people might come out of the woodwork if they hear this and say, oh, no, I'm a pro like you and I've never fallen for that. Human nature is a fickle thing and the criminals know this. And so we've got to focus on, there was an executive order from President just yesterday talking about cybersecurity in this country. And so there's going to be technical things, there's going to be regulatory things, but yes, at the end of the day, it's human behavior, that chair keyboard interface.
Yeah, and we've seen the consequences of this as well. Damon Small, it's a pleasure to speak with you. We'd love to pick your brain again because I have a feeling, especially now that this ransom was paid and everything has been made public, maybe it's going to increase in frequency, at least publicly, now that it'll, with groups like this. But biggest pipeline in the country, a lot of people are going to be talking about this for a long time. Damon, thanks so much for your time today. It was a real pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure. Thank you very
Of
much.
course. Take care.